The lines for bathrooms were like an hour long, but not knowing any better, I had a great time. Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if you're new. If you are returning, it's very likely that you have found me through some of my LuLaRoe content, including my story of the very disastrous 2016 LuLaRoe convention. But I also have been to 3 31 Gifts conventions, each with kind of a varying level of enjoyment, and I wanted to share some of those stories today. So I joined 31 in 2012, a few months before their convention that year, and several members of my team had gone to the conference previously, and they encouraged me to go that year, and I thought that I was kind of too new or inexperienced to bother going. Of course, now I know that MLMs would love for the new people to go to their conference, you know, as soon as possible for indoctrination kind of purposes, but at the time I thought, you know, I'm too new and it wouldn't really be like worth it for me to go. So actually MLMs often will share a metric of like the number of people who went to convention who had like some percentage increase in their business the following year. So, you know, they had higher sales, or they had more parties, or they ranked up that following year, kind of as, you know, incentive or proof that it's worth going because it will improve your business if you go. My personal experience, I'll just say up front, is that if anything, it kind of sets back your business because you're basically like off the grid for a week. And you know, if you're trying to schedule things or do a certain number of sales or that sort of thing, if anything, it kind of takes you out of being able to do those activities. But anyway, so in 2012, you know, those members of my team went to the convention and they shared their experience at our following team meeting. We usually had them like every 2 or 3 months, and I decided that, yeah, I would probably like to go the following year. So in general, conferences for any company are like a time where they roll out new products, maybe introduce new policies, like updates to their website, that sort of thing. They also honor their high-ranking consultants. There's always some kind of award ceremony, and overall, you know, they're just like building devotion to their brand and their mission. So 2013, the 31 conference was in Atlanta, Georgia, where it had been the previous year. So several members of my team drove from Pennsylvania to Atlanta because they had to be there a couple days early because there was like an earlier first day for like director level people before the rest of the conference started. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, but I wasn't able to leave right then. Maybe I couldn't leave work for that long or something. So I flew down by myself closer to the start date and met everyone there. And actually, as I was thinking back about this, I was like, how did I get from the airport to wherever we were going? Because I did not use Uber for a couple years. I don't even know if there was Uber in 2013. And I definitely didn't call a taxi cab. So I'm like, how did I even get there? I don't know. Somehow I got to where everyone was. So 31 will reserve like blocks of rooms at several hotels, and then they have like a shuttle service that takes conference attendees to the convention center and then back to all the hotels. There might be different shuttle routes. So it was actually on one of those shuttle rides at this conference where one of the girls that I was traveling with asked me, if you weren't selling 31, what other company would you join instead? And I was like, that didn't even occur to me because I wasn't selling 31 because I needed the job or the income. I had a full-time job, and actually so did she in the same industry. So like it hadn't even occurred to me that I would pick a different MLM if I weren't with 31. I just joined 31 because I like the products and I like the company. But anyway, that was just like one little anecdote from that event. So we stayed at a really large hotel downtown in Atlanta. And a lot of people who were there for a conference had really strange, scary experiences at that hotel. So just for us personally, we found a condom under the bed in the room that we were in. But a lot of the other groups that were there had like people just walk in the door, like random people, men, different people. Some people said that they were hotel staff. Some people just like opened the door and looked in and closed the door. But at some point, like, you know, people were saying like, oh, they were blocking their hotel room door with furniture when they were in there for the night. So So that was kind of scary. Honestly, I know I have the hotel written down. I'm not gonna like badmouth the hotel, but it was huge. I have a picture of the elevator keypad. Like, I know we were on the 57th floor, so it was a very big hotel. So first day we go to the expo center. There's tons of decor and signage. The theme was celebration, spelled with a 10 in the word because it was the 10th anniversary of 31. So in the expo room that we kind of went through first, there was demonstrations of all the new products and prints. There was samples of everything. There were demos of the embroidery machines that they used. One of the big selling points of 31 was that almost every item could be personalized with embroidery at the time. They do other kinds of personalization now, but at the time you could embroider things on it. So they had embroidery machine demos. For all of the top leaders in the company, they each had like a little booth where you could meet them at certain times, and then you could also like leave them a little note. So I don't think that I left them a note, but I honestly didn't even know who our like topmost leaders were, I don't think, but we did find, like, I don't even remember what they are, like SED and NED. I know one was like National Executive Director, but we did find like our topmost people that our team fell under, and we did like visit their booth. There was also a recreation of the original basement office where the founder of 31, Cindy Munroe, started the company in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. I will always remember that. And there was a lot of like timelines and company history all throughout, again, because it was the 10th anniversary. There was like all the catalog covers for the past 10 years and a lot of historical stuff, especially at this convention because it was like the milestone anniversary. So that first day that we were there, while a lot of the leaders were attending their early events, it was really great because there weren't that many other consultants there. So we pretty much had the place to ourselves to explore this whole like expo area. But when the official events for all attendees started, it became clear that there were major crowd issues at this event. And what had happened was 31 had kind of opened up attendance to everyone. Even if they missed the cutoff to register as an attendee, they just said, you know, show up and we will let you in. So a lot of people just flew in from all over the country and showed up, and they weren't ready for the number of people there. And these people also were kind of left in a lurch because, you know, if you flew in from some other state and there was nowhere for you to go, like they were kind of stuck. So I think, you know, they did just let everyone in, but it was really just a crowded mess, this 2013 event. So for example, we had our little name badges, and every name badge had like a little barcode or something that they were supposed to scan to let people into the different sessions and classes that they were supposed to be in, to get your amenity. So at basically every session or event that you went to, there was an amenity, which is like a free gift. So by the end of the conference, you have like a little pile of free gifts. And they were supposed to scan to make sure everyone was just getting one of everything and they were in the place they were supposed to be. Well, the scanners were not working. Like as of day one, they weren't working. So it kind of went by an honor system. And what happened was people ended up taking multiples of things, saying like, oh, you know, there's 5 of us here, I'm just gonna grab one for everybody and I'll hand them out. And they may or may not have actually been doing that. So then they were running out of things and not everyone got everything. So actually at the beginning of one of the sessions of conference, Cindy Munroe, the founder, kind of begged people to please only take one. She said it was like taking all the mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving dinner before the dish made its way to get passed to everybody. And actually, I think the next day, someone had anonymously returned some of the extra items that they'd taken, and they had included a note that said like they were sorry for taking more than their share of potatoes. So I will still always remember that mashed potato analogy. But there was also, you know, just crowding, like people were crammed into the conference rooms for the different training and events. There were big issues with people saving seats, and then there weren't enough seats for everybody, and they were like, please do not save seats, just everyone file in and sit where you're gonna sit. The lines for bathrooms were like an hour long. The venue was well over capacity, I'm sure. but not knowing any better, I had a great time. I became closer with my team, the people that I traveled there with. I met several new friends from all over the country that I kept in touch with. I'm still in touch with some of them. I had really made it a mission to try to like network and connect with as many people as possible, and so I think I did that. The whole event concluded with an award ceremony. Like I said, they always honored like the topmost consultants, and it was like a dress up night kind of thing. And then we had planned to leave the following morning. I was going to drive back home with the group of people that I was with, but instead they decided they really wanted to drive home that night and drive home overnight, which is a real long drive from Atlanta to Pennsylvania. There were some scary moments, but we did get home the next morning, and then I probably slept for about 2 days. So now we come to 2014, and because of all those crowd issues the previous year, 31 decided to hold 2 conferences. One in Colorado for consultants who were west of the Mississippi River, and then one in Columbus, Ohio, which is where their headquarters is, for consultants who live east of the Mississippi River. And I know that there was some, confusion and some kind of unique situations where maybe, like, I can't even think of it, but maybe there's like a city, or there was a team where like half of them were on one side of the river and half of them were on the other, and what were they gonna do? But I think, barring those little one-off things, splitting up the group did work out better for that large of a group. I know that not everyone liked there being 2 conferences because they were not simultaneous, and so all those like big exciting announcements, that I said that's like what happens at conferences, is they make those big announcements. Half of the group heard them before the other half had their conference, and I forget which was earlier, but I believe the Colorado one was earlier, so by the time we were in Columbus, we didn't get like the exciting fresh announcements. But I traveled with pretty much a lot of the same people from my team. We drove from eastern Pennsylvania to Columbus, Ohio, which is a long drive, but it's doable. I had designed us matching team t-shirts because the previous year I had noticed that a lot of teams had little matching outfits. So I made us shirts. I couldn't find any pictures of the backs, but the fronts just had our team name, and then the backs had like kind of a like the back of a jersey, but we were all number 31, and it was pretty cool. And this conference was just such a different experience from the previous year. Just everything went so smoothly. We had such a good time. The city of Columbus really, they like rolled out the pink carpet for us, and many of the hotels and restaurants and other businesses had like special signage and maybe special offers for people who were there for the conference. We also had more time to explore the city, and I think Columbus just in general is like a more explorable city than like downtown Atlanta was. We were able to eat at like a lot of the local restaurants and check things out, and although the crowd there might have been almost as big as the crowd in Atlanta, and remember that was only half of the attendees because half of them were in Colorado, it was just much better managed, and everything was like a lot calmer and smoother. So I think in previous years they had offered a tour of the home office in Columbus, but since the crowd that year was so large they couldn't offer that. But what they did have was in the product expo area that year, it was a lot bigger and nicer, and there was actually an area that featured employees from their factory in China, where a lot of the products were manufactured, and they explained how they made the products. They had a video of Cindy and her husband Scott's trip to the factory that I guess they had gone on that year, and they really spoke a lot about like the positive impact that they had on the workers and how they were treated so well. Now being a like Christian based company, the name 31 actually comes from a Bible verse. They did offer an optional praise and worship session in the morning of conference, which I would have skipped, but some of the girls that I was traveling with wanted to go, so it was pretty much just like a band playing Christian praise songs that somehow everybody there in the audience knew. I had no idea, but it wasn't like a real like church service or like a real worship session. It was basically just like a Christian rock little concert before the event started. But overall, that year was a really fun experience. The group that I traveled with was great. I got to visit a friend who lived in Columbus, and I made new friends at the conference again that I still kept in touch with. And the drive from Ohio to Pennsylvania, you know, it was long, but it was pretty easily done. So overall, that was like a much better experience than the first conference that I had gone to. Now the next year was 2015, and at that point I had joined Keep Collective, which I actually learned about from another Pennsylvania-based 31 consultant who I met at a rest stop bathroom on the way to Columbus the previous year. So that's a different MLM company that I had joined, so I was then a member of two, and that was their first ever convention for Keep, and I didn't want to miss it, so I went to that convention instead of the 31 convention in 2015. Wasn't great, but I had fun. That could be a separate video because this one's just about 31, but I didn't go to 31 in 2015, and I think most of the rest of my group that I had been traveling with still did go that year. Then in 2016, of course, was the LuLaRoe convention. I've done a whole separate video about that mess, so you can go watch that if you want to hear what I did in 2016. And then comes 2017. So 2017, I was officially out of LuLaRoe, and none of my other 31 teammates were planning to go to convention that year. By that point, the consultant base was not as active as it had been just, you know, the couple years prior. So my husband and I decided to go together to the 31 conference and kind of make a little vacation out of it. So like we even took an extra day to explore Columbus like before the conference. So now, better understanding the whole lay of the land, I immediately booked us a hotel right next to the convention center, so we wouldn't have to mess with shuttle buses. We could just, you know, walk back and forth, and that just saves a lot of time. We ended up getting a whole suite in that hotel with like a kitchenette, and there was multiple rooms, which would have been great if it was a group of consultants going together, but it was just the two of us, so it was like a really special upgrade. But the weirdest coincidence was one of my best friends from elementary school, who had moved away years ago, but she was also a 31 consultant. Not only was she at the conference, she was staying in the same hotel in the room right next to ours. I didn't even know she was gonna be there, let alone be in our hotel, let alone be next door. So that worked out really great because we ended up hanging out with her and like going to all the events together with her. Her family was there too, but they weren't going to the events, so they, you know, they did their own thing, and she stayed with me and my husband. So that was actually really fun, and it worked out really well. So because of the like smaller amount of active consultants, they were back to doing just one conference for the whole country again, but the crowd was just so much smaller and calmer and more pleasant overall. And we also had the opportunity this year to take a tour of the home office in Columbus, including like the area where they do the embroidery and the personalization of the products, and the warehouse. And actually some consultants were selected for like a warehouse shopping spree. I remember there was like a timer, and it wasn't throughout the whole warehouse, but there was like certain shelves that they had access to, and they could like just pick whatever they could grab, you know, supermarket sweep style, before the timer went off. So for that year, I actually made on this YouTube channel a whole video about our visit to Columbus and the conference, and then a whole separate video just about that warehouse tour. So if you're interested in those details and really seeing specifically how the conference went, check those out. But overall, that was a really fun trip. My husband was a really good sport, and he actually still references the presentation that they were given at like a special training for husbands. If you watch my video about that conference, you'll see him speak about it like right after it happens. But it was sort of like, you know, for like the traditional husbands who didn't want their wives to be successful, kind of like calming them, I guess. And also I think they did speak to the fact that, you know, the products were manufactured overseas, and hey, maybe you are an American guy who like might have lost his job to, you know, overseas manufacturing, and like how does this really benefit them. And it was very interesting, and I kind of wish I could have seen the husband session, but my husband still does like reference it sometimes. And like I said, you know, we were able to visit friends who lived in Columbus, and my old friend who ended up going to a lot of the events with us, we got to hang out with her, so that was really fun, and it worked out really well. But by the following spring, I had kind of unexpectedly gone inactive with 31. I have a video about about that as well and what happened there. So I just chose not to take any actions to reinstate my account, and that just ended my time in all MLMs. And I hate referring you back to other videos, but if you are interested, I have a whole video about like my entire MLM history, which you basically just heard almost all of referenced here. But if you want a little more detail on what all MLMs I was part of, I think there was 4 of them, you can check out that video. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was like a little walk down memory lane. I pulled together a bunch of old pictures that hopefully you've seen up on screen. But yeah, it was, you know, varying degrees of enjoyment for all of these, but really at the time, you know, not knowing any better or different, I think I had fun at all of them. I don't feel like I was indoctrinated at those events, but I can definitely see how they could have that effect. Definitely, you know, the goal there is to get everyone in the same place and kind of, you know, doing the chants together or, you know, cheering for the same things. There's always something that's like a sob story. There's always some person who has like a personal success story, but it was like, you know, oh, she had some disease or some horrible thing happened, but then 31 turned her life around. There's always like stories like that in videos and, you know, pieces where people come speak. I didn't even mention actually what happens at the sessions, which are pretty much all the same. You know, it's like introducing the new products. They'll usually have some kind of outside speaker, like a motivational speaker or something. The last one that I went to, actually, they had a National Geographic photographer who was a motivational speaker, but that was kind of interesting. So watch my video about the last 31 conference I was at if you really want to see in detail like what the sessions are like. But yeah, this was more just about the experience of attending. So I hope you found it interesting. If you did, leave me a comment. If you've been to any, you know, MLM conventions yourself, I would love to hear your stories about that. So leave a comment as well. And thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.